In this video, I'm going to talk about how I accumulated $25,000 of high interest debt over the course of 6 years, starting in 2013 and peaking at the start of 2020. I will also share the two major turning points for me financially, how I got myself out of that debt over the course of a year and a half, and how I've been saving and investing my money since then. At the risk of oversharing, but in the interest of transparency, I will also share my income and how my investments and student loans have changed over these years as well. My hope is that this can serve as a kind of cautionary tale and hopefully help somebody who's on this same trajectory. So, here's my story. In 2013, I graduated college, I moved halfway across the country, and I started a job outside of my field of study making $10.20 per hour. At the end of 2013, I'd made $9,000, accrued $500 on my credit card, made 0 payments on my student loans, was auto-enrolled in my company's 401k, and had a well-negative net worth. In 2014, I bought skis, ski boots, a ski pass, and a mountain bike, and although I got great deals on these things, I still bought them using money that I didn't have. I'd frequently walk over to Jason's Deli on my lunch break for work and spend anywhere from $10 to $15 on lunch. I'd also walk over to the Starbucks on my shorter breaks for coffee. I had it in my head that in the near future I would be making significantly more money and I would easily be able to pay down these debts. Here's the thing, if you're relying on your future self to bail you out, that means you're going to have to become that person. And you're not going to become that person by being somebody who needs to be bailed out. If you look at the chart on the green line, you can see a significant jump up, but that's only really because in 2013, I started partway through the year. My high interest debt at this point, after buying the skis and ski boots and so on, had risen to $2,000. The balance on my student loans had risen to $35,000. At this point, I still didn't have a car loan, and my investments had grown to $800. And at this point, my net worth continued to drop a little bit more. In 2015, my income increased beyond 2014, but so did my spending. My 2 roommates unexpectedly moved away 4 months before the end of our lease. I found a subletter, but she ended up leaving 2 months before the end of the lease without notice. This left me with 2 months of full rent obligations. This, plus having to move and needing to come up with the cash for first month, last month, and security deposit, I didn't have that money. So I went to the bank and I got a loan so that I could pay for those things, plus also pay off the balance on my credit card. In 2015, we can see that my income had risen to $31,000. My high interest debt had also risen to $5,000. My student loans were about the same at around $35,000. My investments had grown to $4,100, and my net worth continued to hover around negative $36,000. After getting a loan in 2015, I let my credit cards run right back up. This is a trap a lot of us fall into. I bought more skis, more ski boots, another ski pass. So I went to the bank and I got another loan, this one large enough to pay for the remainder of the first loan, plus all of the spending that I had done. I also used my tax refund and my bonus at work as a down payment, and I financed the car for $8,000 at 8% interest over a 72-month term. This is a crazy long term. Don't do this. So we can see in 2016 that my income didn't really change too much, only a couple $100s. My high interest debt had almost doubled. My student loan balance continued to increase, and now I had a car loan for $8,000. And my net worth dropped to negative $45,000. 2017 was a lot more of the same. A lot of small, irresponsible purchases with a couple bigger ones. I had gotten into ultra running and trail running in general, so I signed up for the Tahoe 200, and I paid for that with money that I didn't have. Altogether, with the cost of entry, the plane tickets to Reno, the rental car, the hotel room, and the gear that I needed, I spent probably about $2,500 to $3,000 on this trail race. And I didn't even finish it. It was 205 miles. I dropped after 63 miles. Still an awesome adventure. It was a great experience, but it was not a financially good decision. In 2017, I got my 3rd loan from Wells Fargo, this time for $14,000. We can see that my income increased a little bit more, a couple $1,000s. My high interest debt had increased to $15,000. My student loans had increased a little bit more to $37,000. And I had only paid off about $2,000 on my car. My investments grew to $13,000, and my net worth continued to hover around negative $45,000. In 2018, I started work as an independent contractor, bagging coffee for my friends who ran a coffee company. This was a super flexible thing that I could do anytime I wanted. If I wanted to stay until 4 a.m., I could stay until 4 a.m. And I did, plenty of times. In 2018, I made about $3,500 from bagging coffee. But at this point in my life, increased income just meant increased spending. We can see in 2018, my income increased to $43,500. My high interest debt had increased to $22,000. My student loans had increased to $38,000, but my car loan was down to about $3,000. My investments had grown to $14,500, and my net worth peaked at its lowest. I guess that would be technically a trough. It bottomed out at $47,000 under. In 2019, I finished paying off my car and I started addressing my student loans. I made about $4,000 this year from bagging coffee, but at this point, that was mostly just getting spent as well. By the end of the year, I had 2 credit cards maxed out, a line of credit that was maxed out, and a remaining loan balance. So in 2019, we can see that at the end of the year, my income had been about $46,000. My high interest debt peaked at $25,000, and I had made a little bit of a dent on my student loans, so those came down to $37,000. My investments had grown to $22,000, and my net worth had risen to negative $40,000. I want to stress at this point that I had maybe contributed about $400 or $500 in the first year and a half that I was working in 2013 and 2014, but I stopped contributing, so all of this growth is purely from my employer contributions. At the start of 2020, I went to the bank to get a loan, just like I had done 3 times prior, except this time I was denied. I was denied a loan because my income was too low, I was asking for too much, and based on the last several years of my financial behavior, my ability to pay the loan down was questionable at best. And I started panicking because I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew that I only had a couple months left, if that, until the amount of money that I was having to spend each month on bills and debt obligations exceeded how much money I was making. Ultimately, the banker and I were able to finesse some details and get me a loan, but I knew that this was going to be the very last time that something like this was going to happen. In that hour-long meeting with the banker, he said something that has always stuck with me. Getting out of debt and staying out of debt is going to require a lifestyle change. The fear of having to move back home, the fear of not being able to make payments because I simply couldn't afford to, really galvanized me to action. When COVID hit, I got furloughed and I was able to file attached unemployment. This meant that I still had a job, but I was able to claim unemployment until I got called back to work. In 2020, I made $5,300 from unemployment. I also donated plasma off and on throughout 2020 and 2021 and made about $4,000 this way. By the end of 2020, I had paid off about $10,000 of my original $25,000 balance. I did this by being diligent and trying to reduce my spending and put more and more of my money towards that debt. That sounds easy to say, but it's a lot harder to do in practice regularly over a longer time frame. So at the end of 2020, my income was $45,000. My high interest debt had reduced to $15,000 from $25,000. My student loans had decreased to $33,000. My investments had grown to $30,000. And my net worth had increased to negative $18,000. The start of 2021 was the second of my 2 major financial turning points. A coworker overheard me talking about investing in the break room, and she put a copy of The Simple Path to Wealth in my mailbox on her last day of work. I took it home, I read it, and it immediately changed the way I thought about debt, investing, and money in general. After I finished reading that book, I started targeting my debt much more aggressively. I focused on paying it off. I focused on reducing my spending as much as humanly possible, and I put every single last cent that I didn't have to pay on bills towards my debt. I found any and all ways that I could make extra money by picking up shifts at work, selling any unused gear laying around the apartment, donating plasma, anything that I could possibly find. When I got a tax refund or a bonus or a raise at work, I put all of that money towards the debt until it was gone. In 2021, I made a little under $44,000. I dropped my high interest debt to 0 as of June 2021. My student loans had reduced to $32,000, and my investments had grown to $43,900. At this point, this was the first time I transitioned into a positive net worth and finished up the year just at a little under $12,000. In 2022, I maintained zero credit card debt. I didn't really make any progress on my student loans because the loan payments were still paused with COVID. I had opened a Roth IRA and an HSA, and I maxed those out and invested those in a low-cost total market index fund. By the end of 2022, my income had increased to a little over $61,000. I am incredibly grateful that in 2021 and 2022, my employers passed broad sweeping pay increases across the board, and I benefited greatly from that. I maintained no high interest debt. My student loans still hovered right at $32,000. My investments had grown to $46,000, and my net worth increased by a couple thousand. In terms of my investments and my net worth, the difference between 2023 and 2022 is even greater than the difference between 2022 and 2021. This just goes to show the power of compounding. When we can get rid of that high interest debt, we're getting rid of a huge drag on our finances, and that makes saving, investing, and even spending money so much easier to do. I learned a lot of lessons over these 10 years. Lesson number 1, I realized that having the COVID pause on student loans and not having children, generally having good health, receiving pay increases at my job, all of these things have helped me get to where I am, and I'm very thankful for them. The second lesson is high interest debt will bury you alive. If you have high interest debt, aggressively pay it down. Don't plan on your future self paying for your current lifestyle. The third lesson is employer contributions to 401ks are awesome. I did not contribute much money to my 401k until the past year, and yet the balance had grown from zero to about $45,000 all on its own just from my employer contributions. The next lesson is be conscientious of each and every time you're giving your money to somebody else. It's not always about the big purchases like skis and ski passes, but a lot of the time it's about the little purchases. For me, this was things like Starbucks and Jason's Deli. When you carry a balance on your credit card, all of those smaller purchases get added on, and it just makes it even harder to pay off. If you're watching this and you don't have credit card debt, you're ahead of the curve. But the average American does carry a balance and does live paycheck to paycheck. If you're watching this and you do carry high interest debt, focus on paying it off. Know that you can do this. I did it, and so can you. High interest debt is like a black hole. If you only carry a little bit and you're far away from the black hole, you don't really feel the effects of its pull too much. But as you start building up debt and moving closer and closer to the black hole, at a certain point, you're going to get pulled past the event horizon. At this point, the gravity is too strong. There's nothing you can do to escape. The interest that's being generated each month exceeds your ability to pay it down. If you're carrying credit card debt, know that it's possible to pay it down, but it's going to take time, it's going to take discipline, and it's going to take a lifestyle change. The sooner you can stop handing your money over to other people, the sooner you can start keeping it for yourself and putting it to work growing for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like this video and you like to see videos like this in the future. Thanks so much.